I'm going to open up a conversation about a journey on leading with purpose. And it's come to be how I think about my own journey, and I look forward to sharing some thoughts. Obviously, it actually could have been my journey to becoming a conscious capitalism, because the overlap is just almost complete. And my path as a business leader began coming out of the 80s in banking and at Pillsbury and other places. But I started to develop a point of view on stewardship of an organization, of a business, that I quickly figured out was a little bit different than the most of the people I was working around. And it took me a while to get conviction around it. But I decided that not only did I look at the game differently, I really wanted to play the game differently. And I met with Warren Buffett in February of 2020 when things were so quiet before the pandemic. And we had a great update on a lot of topics. And he ended and said, "Jim, Brooks is a great story. You should write a book." And I'd actually been thinking about it, so I did write a book. It came out in April. And it really is sharing the Brooks story. It is a great turnaround story, but it's also a challenger brand story. And if you're not the number one platform company in your space, you're a challenger brand. And our industry has that, like so many do. And so it's a great David and Goliath story. We navigated our way successfully for at least the first 20 years. And we're excited about our opportunities going forward in this David and Goliath mode. And then it's also a purpose-driven brand building story, which is really the core of it in terms of our success. And so I absolutely could have titled it, My Journey, click, click, to Becoming a Conscious Capitalist. That'd be a better cover. Anyway, so with that, my goal is to bring this story alive, and let's begin. So when I joined Brooks in 2001, over 20 years ago, I wrote this quote that's attributed to Benjamin Disraeli on the whiteboard in my office. "The secret to success is constancy of purpose." And I did it for a very, very deliberate reason. I wanted to keep myself focused. By this time, I'd been CEO of 3 different businesses, private equity, divisions of public companies, and the like. And each one of them was sort of a turnaround, a repositioning. I became a consumer products person, which I love. And we had success, we built it up, and each one of them was sold. Sort of 3 years, kind of fix it up, and the owners ended up selling each one of those businesses. So I got to Brooks, and I just decided, okay, I've always admired, the businesses I've admired were great brands, and they'd been built over time and consistently and executed well. So I just wanted to do that. I didn't want to do a 3 and out again, move the family, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to build a real brand. And by this time, I'd come to observe, at least from my experience, that great brands were really built over a long period of time. So much of what I had been doing is realizing value for our investors and getting a transaction to realize that value. That happens all the time. But it wasn't creating value. Just creating real value happened over much longer periods of time. And I entered business in the 70s and 80s, as I mentioned. And at that time, it was pretty clear that the mantra that was going around most businesses was that the purpose of business is to deliver profit. And it was espoused by the renowned University of Chicago professor and economist Milton Friedman. And that sensibility had really come into so many businesses at that time. Iconic CEOs like GE's Jack Neutron Welch, and at the time Sunbeam's Chainsaw Al Dunlop. Great names, and they were both books, right? At the time, they were probably somewhat proud of those names. But they were championed by so many others, and they were ruthlessly cutting costs and delivering profits, driving profit growth. David Gallis recently featured the Jack Welch story in The Man Who Broke Capitalism and really brought this alive. I started my career after banking in the early years in my 20s at Pillsbury. And I witnessed so many leaders that were trying to really use the Jack Welch playbook. Across over 30 businesses, they were really focusing on delivering the numbers, revenue and profit growth every quarter, very much a short-term focus. And in the 80s, Pillsbury was a large packaged goods, packaged foods growth company. And so they, I think, delivered 10 years of quarterly revenue and earnings growth. And so it was almost a forced march across the business to deliver those quarterly results for Wall Street. And what I saw I was an assistant to the chairman for a while, strategy, a lot of corporate development efforts were going on. But I saw across that leaders were actually cutting costs to make their numbers. And it wasn't probably going to end well. They had some great brands like the Doughboy business, Haagen-Dazs, but they also had Burger King and lots of other things. So underinvestment across the business meant that the brands were starting to fade. They weren't good enough to attract new customers in very, very competitive categories. So unfortunately, the music stopped. And in a classic 80s unfriendly takeover, Pillsbury was sold in an unfriendly, hostile manner. And the lesson, to me was clear. I think I was 26, 27 years old at the time. Short-term focus had real-world impact. First of all, on people, lots of layoffs, lots of restructuring, lots of change in the business driven by the issues. And then, it had real implications for the strength of the brands and the businesses competitively. They were actually getting beat and not winning new customers over because so many of the competitors were just better positioned and more focused, I think, on the customer. And then third, it had real impact on shareholder value. The company wasn't delivering its potential, and obviously then things changed. So watching all that, it was really impactful for me. I made a decision there that I was never going to do that. If I wanted to run a business, I always have, and I was going to get the keys and get the wheel to a car to run the business at some point. But I told myself I was never going to do that. I was never going to, deliver short-term results at the expense of the health of the enterprise, the long-term competitive, sort of posture for that enterprise. It almost was a moral issue. I mean, how could you do that as a leader and as a steward of this business and play that short-term game? So, from there on out, you're as an owner, a CEO, a leader, you're responsible for the long-term health of the business. So, profit is obviously essential. I mean, we sort of start with that in so many ways. But here's the key. A sole focus on profit is actually really risky. If that's all you're doing, it's actually really risky. You're going to need more than happy shareholders in most categories, unless you're a monopoly, and there are a few of those out there. But in most categories, you're going to need more than happy shareholders to really compete for talent and people and customers, because every category has got somebody that's trying to disrupt it and do a better job and win over that customer. These outcome-based profit goals really ignore the how and the why you do what you do as an organization. Everyone from customers and employees have, of course, options, and communities obviously care too, and they want to know more about every organization and how they're operating. More choices than ever today. So I believe the opportunity, and this is the conclusion that we started with at Brooks, is to use purpose to link all the interests of the company's stakeholders, the ecosystem. And you can't solve all the world's problems, so we've really focused at Brooks on all of the partners in our ecosystem, obviously the communities we operate in, but really first and foremost our employees and our customers. And one of the things I think that maybe is a little bit unique, you guys are such a great group. I spent 40 years in YPO. And I know many of you are in that organization too. But what made me different in YPO, and I always felt it, is I'm a hired gun. I don't own this company. So I've had to solve this for all the stakeholders, and in the long-term basis, you've got to sort of bring everybody with you. I've often thought about the analogy of a company. It's like a wall of bricks you have to move forward, and you got to move them all forward over time. Some fall behind, and you got to get focused on them. But here we decided to use purpose to link all of our stakeholders together. So it wasn't just good at keeping me focused and playing through challenges and investors and the like to build hopefully a brand over time. Being part of a team and building a brand over time is what I figured out what I enjoy. So it's one of the reasons I'm here. But a purpose could actually catalyze all of our employees to start, and maybe even our customers and our partners and our shareholder as well. And so that's the journey we began. And really looking at purpose, of course, as a North Star for the entire organization. And I think for it to be that, a couple conclusions that we came to. First of all, it has to link to visible long-term opportunities. It has to have some, if the organization success is kind of pointed that way, hopefully the North Star is going to be simpatico with that. Next, all the people that are critical to being there, if it's going to be a successful scenario, sort of have to be linked into it. And especially in our case, for a consumer products company, for a brand, customers. It really has to ideally link to customers. And if it's anchored in the aspiration and the values for positively impacting your customers, then it really has a chance for setting the stage for real success. And we were in a room actually talking about what is Brooks' mission, what is Brooks' purpose, and we decided, you know what? We'd rather have a purpose than a mission because we really thought it was more powerful. A mission is often a set of discrete goals. You're standing here and you look forward and you set some goals. Oftentimes they're financial goals, they're outcomes, but they can change with campaigns, they can change with an evolving environment, and there's almost always a deadline or a finish line to a mission. Purpose, in the way we've constructed it, really has no finish line. There's really no arriving with purpose. As well, we talked about maybe we should develop a vision. And again, we came to believe that a purpose is more powerful than a vision because a vision is really a dream for a potential outcome in the future that you hope to achieve. And it's usually coming from the team inside. It's an internal aspiration that you have for your company versus maybe being even focused on the customer. So, a purpose is a conviction for action for other people, in a way. It's an external oriented purpose, and it's not just for the owners. This is a moment where I often think about, Milton Friedman never ran a brand. He never created a brand when he came up with the profit purpose. So, building Brooks with purpose. The story goes to 2001 when I came in as CEO. I was the fourth CEO in 2 years. And when I walked in the door, the buzz was there. Here's another one. Here comes another one. They actually had a pool on how long I would last, which you got to love that. And that's not uncommon today. Leadership is a challenging role. I think the over and under was about 4 months. So I've totally busted that pool, which I'm super happy with. But it really was an existential time for Brooks. A lot of debt, losing money, competitive posture was not great, a turnaround in every sense, and we had to stem losses. But as we began to see that turnaround happen in the first 12 months, I knew that every day we were building a brand. Every interaction we had with customers, every product, every marketing message, we were building a brand every day, even though we didn't have big marketing campaigns and a lot of resources. And in those early days, it was becoming clear that we really needed a North Star, that Brooks needed something out there. So, we came up with inspire everyone to run their path. And, what was interesting about this is that, it really was going to force us every day, challenge us every day to engage, not just to gear everyone up for their path or their run, but to engage with them at a level, rational, emotional, mind and heart, that at the margin we can inspire them. That's a really high calling. So the word inspire was really key because it was going to challenge us every day. And there's kind of no arriving at that. You start at zero every day on this purpose. And the why for us was super easy. The sport of run is actually really special among all the sports out there because it transcends the sport and becomes an investment in yourself, in health, wellness, fitness, and the like. So running is a limitless source of positive energy for people. And if you got up today and it's not over yet, and you run, you move, you walk, you're going to have a better day. It's just almost 100%. And if you add up 3 to 5 days a week over your 30-year life, you're gonna have a happier, more whole, full life and healthier on average. And in our business, this is the biggest category in all of sporting goods, athletic, outdoor fitness is running. It now actually includes walking, but there are over 150 million people that run worldwide that say they run now, and that's growing. It's about a $30 billion category, as I mentioned. So, it can impact the world in a positive way. Then there's the who, and I think especially for a brand and a consumer products company, but maybe every company, the most important decision you make is who your core customer is. It's such a critical decision. And, we refounded the company from full-line athletic into run, and we never look back. We're focused on runners, the running community, and everybody that puts one foot in front of the other. And fortunately for me, that includes walking. Walking is slow running. It's about moving every day. But that was huge for us. And so again, because this is sort of no arriving at this. This is what we put on the wall in our lobby. This is what's been there for 20 years. It'll never change. This is the focus of our entire organization, and we link everything to it. So Brooks today, off of this purpose, we've built a company that's on a journey. And so after 2 decades, this is our 21st year of a performance running focus with this purpose. We're headquartered in Seattle. I view us as a small global brand in our industry. We have about 1,300 employees around the world. And what we do is sort of simple. Doing it isn't, right? It's complicated, but what we do, we create great performance gear. We try to make the best product in every segment and price point in the category every time we embark on putting gear into the marketplace. And then with our Run Happy brand ethos, this is really unique, I think, in our industry. We celebrate your run. Not the person who won the Olympic marathon, not the person who's winning the 1,500 meter. We celebrate you and your run, whether it's your 20th marathon or it's the first 5K that you're training for and you just started literally walking around your block. It's about you and your run. So that's, the position that we have against this large global market. And we've had success at it. We hit a big milestone in 2021 where we cracked the $1 billion brand number. And that's big in our industry. That's a pretty small club in athletic fitness and outdoor. And it came from this intense focus on the runner. And we had this BHAG outcome that we about 10 years ago, we put this $1 billion number out there, not because it was a cool financial goal, which it was, but getting to that meant we were going to have to earn a lot of new runners into our brand, and that's been the focus. It really was earned. We often describe our journey as we've built this brand a pair of feet at a time. It's really true. We've done it, sort of the hard way in the sense it's premium performance. We don't do a lot of merchandising and promotional product. So execution excellence has been the driver. So, and this year we'll probably hit just under $1.3 billion, supply chain constrained. I don't need to share those stories with you. It's such a challenging environment, but we've still got great momentum and great opportunity in our business. So bringing Brooks' purpose into brand and culture. At first we just put the purpose on the wall and it was sort of organic as a small company. We grew from 60 million when I started in 2001. We actually shrunk it to about 45. And obviously we're just under 1.3 billion this year. But at every stage of our growth, 500 million, 700 million, a billion, the puzzle on how to bring purpose into our brand and into our culture is really evolved. We had to resolve it sort of on every stage of our scaling. But embedding it in our brand and culture was just essential. So start with brand. I think about brands as having, great brands as having all the complexity of a really interesting human being. Brands have values, they have philosophies, they have sensibilities. In the competition game that we're in, each brand is distinctive and you don't want to try to be like the Nike. We want to be Brooks, right? And so we have goals, we have ambitions as a brand, and we bring all that together and we try to express that consistently in our product to build trust in it, consistently in all of our brand messaging, so people get to know us. And if you don't know yourself, no one else will ever get to know you. So expressing that brand consistently is something we think a lot about. And the other thing that's part of a brand, obviously I mentioned values, but are really your convictions. And this is where we get into, how do we interact and be in conversation on all of the DEI topics of the day? How do we interact and be in conversation on all of the sustainability challenges that we see in the world today? And we've been on this journey for about 20 years, but it really came out of, we don't want initiatives in sustainability. We don't want, campaigns in sustainability. This matters because runners care about where they run, clean air, clean water, so on and so forth. And remember, I may personally care about a lot of these things. On the sustainability side, much of it came from our employees in the early days in the 2000s. They care deeply, which is not difficult to do if you're living in a beautiful place like Seattle. And so, some of that was starting to brew amongst our employees, but we'd get letters from customers as well. And then on the inclusion side, it was a similar conversation. We used to say, and often describe running as the most inclusive sport the world has ever known. And we believe that because left foot, right foot, repeat, right? I mean, the invitation there is for everybody to come in. So many people walk marathons. This is an inclusive sport, except that it wasn't. It wasn't really welcoming everyone in the community with an open door. And so, we came up with this conviction, we really believe in a world where everyone is welcome to run and has a place to do it. And I think convictions are powerful because, I think they're more powerful than values. I describe a conviction as a belief that's backed by action. And that's why our People and Planet initiatives, where we're going to get to, they're not campaigns. They're really attached to the brand. And I deliberately did that because I truly wanted them to outlast me. And I think brands are essentially built on trust, as leaders are. I wanted people to trust Brooks over time. So these convictions on inclusion and our sustainability journey had to be attached and bolted to the brand as convictions. And because it wasn't, I don't own Brooks, so it just can't be how I feel about it. On the people side, the conviction is we're going to champion the run for all. And it obviously starts with our own organization and having our organization absolutely reflect the running community and its diversity and so on and so forth from the board on down. We've got initiatives on that. But also in the running, the sport, and the community, we've got initiatives around all of that. But where we started with is we always start with how we feel, and all of our employees bring that in, right? Everything is coming into companies today. That's what makes these leadership positions challenging and difficult. So we started with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, and on our people conviction, championing the run, we picked 2. Good health and reduced inequalities. There's so many issues in the world to address, right? It's overwhelming. But for our brand, we picked health, which goes right to our purpose of getting people to move and run because of the benefits it has for people. And then reduced inequality because it should welcome everybody. So all of our goals are built around that. And then on the planet side, we did the same thing. I mean, there's so many challenges in the world today, it's overwhelming. But for Brooks, for the company, we chose climate action and responsible consumption. And we signed the Climate Pledge 2040 carbon neutral to bring the Paris Accords 10 years in early. And we're on that journey. And we're in the foothills of a very tall mountain. But we think it's table stakes. We think we don't have a choice. And that's the key. It's attached to the brand. It's a conviction. We have to get there. And we're making progress on it. And again, we're communicating that. We're communicating our goals. We're being transparent with where we are on that journey. I was on a supplier call last night. We have strategy meetings with all of our partners on the supply chain side. And we talked about 10 years from now, we got to be manufacturing regional. No one knows how to do that yet. It's not just factories and trained people. It's a whole material supply chain, but we have to do it. So these are super powerful for us, and they are really an embodiment of how purpose is sort of being fulfilled inside of our brand. We think over time, again, to earn trust and affinity, hearts and minds, these are the kinds of things that are going to give you the mark of authenticity, which you can't ever claim. It has to be earned and given to you. So on to culture. Early in my career, a peer of mine said, Jim, great strategy, great vision, great mission, purpose is really exciting, but guess what? Without execution, you, my friend, are hallucinating. And I never forgot it. And I think at times I love strategy, I love brands, I love product, and just putting products out there and seeing people smile and tell their friends about it and maybe buy another one. It's just the creative side of business that I really love. But it all happens with execution. And, I think now today, it's so competitive out there, especially when conditions get difficult, which they clearly are going to again. The last 10% in a competitive category really, really matters, especially for a challenger brand, especially for a niche brand. So everything at Brooks that creates value, our best products, our new products, innovation, our marketing campaigns and our storytelling, when we're out in the physical world running with runners, when we're doing digital storytelling and the like, it's all of it comes from people. Execution is all about people. And I think business then is decidedly a team sport. It's a team sport, and that's where this conscious leadership really comes from, right? Nothing I can do is going to make the difference at Brooks. It's all 1,300 people, and we're trying to bring them in as a team and hopefully attract them, but then create loyalty with our employees, just like we have with hopefully our customers. So how do you lead that culture? Well, all of us start with values. Of course you need to have values, and we all spend a lot of time on values. These values have been at Brooks for a long time. We've articulated them with some modernity and freshness, but they're really important to us. And so we socialize our values at every turn. But what we found, and I often say to our employees, especially in new employee orientations, values are just, words on a page. What really matters, of course, is our behaviors. And leading people with purpose isn't holding a sheet of our values and then maybe not acting consistently with those. They really don't drive the culture, behaviors do. And so we've been on this journey of culture is really values in action. It's behaviors. And that took me a while to learn. And so what happened to us, I'll tell a little story. In the early days, we knew our culture was evolving in a good way. It was in sync with the ethos of our sport and the run. We fell in love on the brand side with Net Promoter Score, right? So we were going to do NPS and ask our customers, would they recommend this brand to a friend? And it's a classic brand measurement, of course, and many of you, I'm sure, do it. And you rank all the brands in the category. And Brooks has had the highest Net Promoter Scores in our category most often every year and significantly for the last several years. And we love that because we're trying to build this brand sort of a runner at a time. So we thought, hey, if NPS works for runners, it should work for employees too. So we're going to do our culture surveys. We're going to add a question on, would you recommend Brooks to a friend to work here? And the scores were pretty good. And we didn't have it benchmarked against every other, competitive employer. But when we got good NPS scores, we said, well, maybe our culture is pretty strong, right? And what we found out, actually, that wasn't right. It was actually wrong. What it proved to be is sort of a happiness score. That Net Promoter Score with employees, it's sort of a happiness score. And so when we got into trouble, when business got tough in 2016 and the market was changing dramatically, our NPS scores dropped. And this happened at a time when we were working our tails off on employee engagement and bringing people in and socializing the playbook and engaging everybody because our future, we are stalled. We hadn't solved for growth at that point. And so nonetheless, we got our surveys back and the NPS scores all dropped. And we thought, this isn't working. We really weren't measuring the behaviors that were underpinning our values that really would give you a sense that the culture's getting stronger or has issues in it. So, what we did was we changed to 36 questions, and all of them ladder up behavioral, observation questions, principally of leaders and managers that all of our employees do. We had 94% return rate on this survey in the last summer. But it's really about behaviors in those 36 questions that ladder up to our values. And so we had the highest scores ever on this survey in the middle of the pandemic, when we were all virtual and doing weekly town halls, which was gratifying. We've worked so hard on it. We created a Connect leadership program that is a huge investment, 5 initial days, 3 full days for 220 managers. I'm in there with a first week manager of people as well. And it's really created a language for us, empathetic, conscious, leading with heart and mind is the essence of the program. It's human leadership. Everybody has to lead strategy. Every leader has to lead strategy. They have to lead the business plan. They have to lead their team and their culture and the development of those folks. But they have to help them be successful too and connect them across the company. So huge change for us. So, pivoting, boy, will your purpose be tested. These are incredibly challenging times. And I think we're all looking at these puzzles that we have to solve, and there are not a lot of answers. And so in tough times, I think it's for people and for companies, you're tested, right? Your values are tested, how you behave and what decisions you make when you're under stress and under pressure is such a reflection, sometimes of your weaknesses, but sometimes of where your North Star is really vectoring to it at the core. And so I think oftentimes in challenges, your true colors come out. And we've just been super aware of that at Brooks. I have been, because we were trying to build a brand, we didn't have one. And so navigating these challenges with purpose as a North Star, we did see as an opportunity. Not easy, but we did see as an opportunity. And it was such a moment where we could literally communicate, shout, plant a flag on what we stood for as a brand, what we stood for as a company. And if we were this way when times were good, and we stayed the same more or less in our promise and our focus and how we saw ourselves playing in this role in this industry, in this sport for the customer, we'd build some credibility. So we had a lot of challenges to navigate. Since I've been there were sort of 4 big ones. And I'm just going to quickly rattle through these, because I think in each one there were external forces that were affecting us. We had our own internal challenges as well. But in each one we navigated, I think, with purpose at the forefront. The first one was the refounding of the company as a running brand coming from full-line athletic footwear and apparel. And so we left the athletic industry that had so many great brands in it, and we refounded the company as a focused run brand. We jettisoned 50% of our product line, 40% of our revenue, including our biggest customer. We walked away from all of that, and there was going to be runnability in every product we built. A lot of the secret in athletic footwear and apparel is a lot of the shoes never go for a run, they never play basketball, they don't do that. They're casual, lifestyle, fashion footwear and the like. Those are huge businesses, great businesses. But we decided we were going to be in the gear business and build trust with runners. And that worked pretty well for almost a decade. And then came the Great Recession. You've all remember that. It wasn't small, very, very uncertain times. And we had a double whammy, because there was a great book called Born to Run, highly recommend it, really inspiring, on trail and ultra running. And they had 2 chapters that threw the entire shoe industry under the bus, said everybody should be running barefoot, and if it wasn't for cushioned shoes, there'd be no injuries. The shoes are causing the injuries. So that was an earthquake, and so we doubled down. We actually took our profits in half. We went to the labs, clinical research, tried to figure out the link between injury and shoes, learned a lot, and we just decided, you know what? We think running's going to make the cut, and we saw it. In February of 2009, people were running and they were buying shoes. They weren't buying apparel, but they were buying shoes. And so we thought, you know what, running's going to make the cut. We invested, and we went on to triple our business in the United States in the next 5 years. And that didn't last. Millennials were very different. They were active, they were running, and we kind of thought they're runners, so they're going to act the same as other ones, but they didn't. So there was just a real shakeout in our industry, and it affected everybody. It affected the big brands too. But they were more interested in lots of things, and maybe not so much in expensive gear, a garage full of gear. So the market was going to $80 kind of athleisure tech light shoes, which we're not good at. And a lot of the market was shifting that way. And then digitally, their behavior was completely different. The iPhone was almost 10 years by that point, and Amazon was transcendent, and were there going to be any stores left in 10 years was sort of the issue. But we thought performance is timeless. We focused on the runner. There's always going to be a runner that wants the best gear. And we just said, you know what? That's what we're good at. We're going to play there. And since Q3 of 2017, we've just been on a tear. And then the pandemic hit, and we've all lived through this. You could all write books on the pandemic. What a crazy world we've been through. In March of 2020, the lights went out on our industry. 90% of our products are sold through retail partners. So in 1 week, every store in Europe closed, and then by the end of March, all the stores in the United States closed. And we had a couple $100 million of product coming on a boat. We have a couple $100 million of receivables from retailers that we didn't know if we were going to get. But, we thought there was a chance that people would go outside and move. We didn't know it. Our radars in apparel and footwear, we have over 20,000 SKUs, and there's colors and new things coming all the time. So the retailers are our radar. They're our windshield of what's happening and when, and all that was disrupted. So we needed new signs, and Strava was one. This was the first 6 weeks of the pandemic. 2.5 times the number of runs were recorded. It just took off. And we kind of thought that would happen. We had over 100 marketing techs around the world. We put them in the same park, in the same place at 4 o'clock every day, and we counted the number of runners. And it matched this. We just saw more people moving. And then we started to see it in digital sales. So the difference here was because we focused on our customer, we turned our supply chain back on 8 weeks into it. No data said we should do that, really, other than this was real. But we just thought, okay, this is going to make the cut. We saw that in the Great Recession, and it certainly did. So rooted in our purpose, I think, and focusing on this customer was really powerful for us. So, we're still on a journey at Brooks. We are still a purpose-driven brand in the making, and we really feel like we've got to earn it every day. It's going to be execution-driven, and watch this space. Excuse me, we think we've got great opportunities going forth. So in closing, I want to share just a short story, and it's a true story. And it really reinforces to me that a well-lived journey with purpose is really the key, because life is short. In April 2007, a Brooks employee, Liz Duncan, set out for a Saturday morning group run. And Liz was just full of positive energy and optimism. She was training for a sub-3-hour marathon, which I always aspired to and never had a prayer to do. And she was waiting on a Seattle street corner for her fellow runners. An out-of-control car jumped the curve, struck her, and killed her on impact. And she was 3 days shy of her 27th birthday. So, Monday, we're all at work, and for many, many, many days afterwards, it was just impossible to walk by her desk and not feel her absence. She had pictures of her family, her friends. She was mentoring a lot of young people through Athletes in Action. Some of their pictures were up. And in the middle of all those smiling faces, she had a favorite Brooks bumper sticker, and it simply said, "Life's short, run long." And I think it so affected all of us because it's just a truth. And I think it's a truth in life. It's certainly the truth that's sort of underneath our culture at Brooks and our brand. I think people that run just take in that moment and absorb it. It's an investment in themselves. And so it still inspires me to this day. And I hope it inspires you as well. It's just a great reminder that it's not about the finish line. You've got to enjoy the journey. You've got to enjoy the journey and the people and the relationships that you have along the way. That's where, frankly, the joy is. So thanks for joining me today. Thanks for having me. I wish you well on your journey on living and leading with purpose. And one more thing, get your run in. It's going to make your day better. Thanks, everybody.